and welcome to another episode of Gaming the System. And as you will see straight away, there's actually four of us here today. So we have managed to encourage Caroline back to do a special edition with us. And we're going to do a couple of shows with Caroline ahead of our panel session at the comic. What's it called,
I
Matt?
think it's a Cardiff Comic and Anime. Is it Anime and Gaming Con?
Anime Con,
That,
yes.
yeah. Sorry.
So yeah, in September. So Caroline will be joining us for that. So we thought we'd help warm her up with a couple of sessions before then. So welcome back, Caroline. It's so nice to see you.
Oh, it's nice to see all of you as well. How have you been doing? You all right?
Well, good.
We have all been okay, yeah. So have you what have you been up to gaming wise since we last spoke?
Well, a lot of the same. There's still been a lot of RimWorld. There's still been a lot of 7 Days to Die, that sort of thing. But I've been playing with my Switch. My Nintendo Switch has got a lot more use. So I've been playing Disney's Dreamlight Valley, which I absolutely love because I'm an achievement whore and it's just entirely about achievement whoring. And so that's just brilliant. And obviously I have also caved and bought the latest Zelda, Kingdom of Tears. Tear. I always get the name wrong because details don't really matter.
Yeah.
But yeah, and again, I haven't made everyone tells me Zelda it is the greatest game ever released, and I've played a fair bit of it. It's fine, but I'm not as blown away as
controversial from the start, Caroline.
I know, just saying. Oh, and honourable mention as well to Satisfactory, which is a game that I got completely addicted to over Christmas and played endlessly for about 2 weeks and then haven't picked up again because I'm slightly worried about the addiction to it. So.
Oh, okay. So you've not stopped playing it because it got boring. You just
I would say it got overwhelming. It does. Satisfactory reaches a point. You sort of keep automating the production of things, and then you're automating the production of hundreds of things, and then you're automating the production of thousands of things, and it gets overwhelming, and then you just sort of have to step away from it before you go insane.
It's always good. So yeah, glad to see that you're still sane. So, well, shall we move on to what we're talking about today? So we are going to talk about the GTS effect, or the Gaming the System effect, which is really, we just wanted to have a chat about how gaming the system and doing the podcast, exploring the podcast, thinking about the topics that we're talking about regularly on the podcast has, if it has, and how it has impacted on our experience of gaming. So the first thing I wanted to ask you guys was, has it impacted your gaming experience in any way, shape or form? So Matt, would you like to kick off?
The main thing is just having it's a different way to take in the experience of playing games. So, for example, anything game related. So, with God of War, Alex and I have, including our Let's Play series, we've probably talked for nearly 10 hours about God of War. And that is stuff that otherwise, and most people, they just experience on their own inside their head, and then it just stays there. Whereas with The Last of Us, Gemini talking for nearly 4 hours on that, Alex and I with all the God of War stuff. It's really helps to process things and bounce new things off and come up with ideas that I wouldn't have come up with otherwise. So it's just a massive enhancement to my gaming perspective.
a bit like a book club for games. Like, I think it's a really valid point, Matt, actually, being able to talk about the games that you experience. I know certainly we're listening to talking with all of you about games, either just ones that you've played that I haven't played, or ones that we're both interested in, has just been so fascinating. And I always come away from every one of those conversations either wanting to play the game if I haven't, or just finding new things to enjoy from it. So I think it is that's always been a really positive thing for me. Alex.
Yeah, I'd agree. I think to add to those points, GTS has given me more gaming friends, so I can have more conversations about gaming. And like very often, I'll see something come up, and it won't be a game that I personally would like, but I'll be like, "Oh, Jen would love talking about this," or "Matt would love to talk about that," and then I'll share it with you or whatever else. I think it definitely feels not like I'm part of well, I've always sort of felt on the periphery of the gaming community, as it were, because I've always played a lot of single player games anyway. And apart from my other halves, like that's the only way I was really. Not many of my other friends were that into gaming, so it's nice to have this little pocket of friends who are like, oh, we can have a good chat about this or that. And I definitely feel like since being part of the pod, I'm more appreciative of like the work that goes into making games, just generally because we talk about that side of stuff a lot. And I'm definitely looking at them with a more analytical eye. I don't want to say like a busman's holiday because obviously I enjoy gaming and being a gamer and stuff, but I will think about like things or just like representation in games or accessibility of a game. I'll be like, oh, I'll make a note of that to talk about on the podcast and things. So yeah, I suppose it's impacted in different ways, but largely I think probably 99% is positive, and the 1% is just like picking up on the way that feminism interacts with gaming. I'm more aware of the perhaps more negative sides of that currently within gaming and as a space as well. So yeah, I think largely positive though, for sure.
Awesome. What about you, Caroline?
Well, yeah, because having had a break, I think it then makes you very aware of it. It's sort of like it was, it has all those things that both Matt and Alex have said. Sort of it's great to have people to talk about games with, and to think about them in a slightly different way and be a little bit more analytical and a bit more sort of, this is interesting how they do this and how they do that and that sort of thing. I think then having had a break, I've slightly got a bit lazy in my gaming again. So I'm like, I had been sort of possibly pushing more boundaries before, like, and I remember very much playing what's the word? Lady Dimitrescu.
Oh, the yes,
Resident
Resident
Evil
Evil, thank you.
Village.
yes.
Yeah, I also seem to have developed old lady dementia as well, by the way. So sorry if I can't remember any names or anything. But yeah, I probably wouldn't have played that all the way through. I mean, even though I used to play Resident Evil games, but I just hadn't bothered in years. And then sort of after talking to you guys about it, I was like, go on then. And it was awesome. It was brilliant. It was the best one I'd played in ages. So I was like, this is great. And I think that's the nice thing, is that having other people to share those ideas and thoughts about gaming with does make you sort of rather than sitting there playing the same game in a rather than just playing RimWorld for the rest of my life, essentially, it does get you slightly out of your comfort zone. Although there's enough mods out there, RimWorld can be 100 different games, but
It can be. All of them equally frustrating. I think it clearly is a gaming version of a book club, I think. And I think it is for my part, it has definitely meant that I have ended up gaming a lot more than I was when we started this. And I know that we started in lockdown, wasn't it? It was
It was,
in the
yeah.
middle of that. So, actually I didn't have a lot more time then. I had a lot less time then, but that was so for me, it's been a real nice kind of return to gaming and to my love of gaming. But it's also made me much more conscious and aware of the equality and inequalities that the issues that we've talked about on the pod, and I think it's made me see the misogyny and see the racism and the ableism, that that is kind of going on, is embedded in the industry in too many ways. And so I think there are things where that I've changed some of my choices, my gaming choices, as a result of social side of things, because we talk about how important and how impactful games can be on all of those things. So have any of you changed? I mean, from that perspective, have you got any sort of?
Well, you saying that did make me think, like, the one game I haven't played in the last year, and I know you guys have, and that's totally fine, but I didn't buy Hogwarts Legacy. And I think they're probably, like, I think that it was a lot of, the conversations we've had about sort of which developers do we want to support and what sort of messages do we want to send. I just went, nah, I'm just gonna swerve that one, because I don't have to buy every game that comes out, and if I'm going to try and send a message with the games that I do support. So I think that definitely had a direct impact there, because before you put a Harry Potter label on it and I buy it. So whereas now I'm like, no, actually, let's make a socially conscious decision.
Absolutely, yeah. What about you two? Anything?
I think I've definitely started playing a lot more board games now, which isn't technically video games, but I think part of it's to do with my current partner because he plays a lot, but also like since the podcast, like we had that wonderful pod where we had, I think it was a Kickstarter game, Library Labyrinth. We had the creators of
Oh
on the
yeah,
pod, which was amazing, and we've now got that game in our little gaming store. We bought it from the crowdfunder Kickstarter, which was amazing. So we've got that to play now. But yeah, generally, I've definitely been partaking in more board games with friends, and it's really fun, definitely. And I look forward to doing that more in the future. I think also I'd never streamed before the podcast and have been doing so for the pod as well, which is an interesting and enjoyable experience, more enjoyable than I suspected. But yeah, no, it's definitely been lots of fun new things have been introduced into the way I game as a result of the pod. Yeah.
I just love. I think far too much. I've always thought far too much, and having a an outlet for that means that I play games for different reasons at times. So there'll be a game that I'm not just about massive 100-hour RPGs anymore. I can sit and play a shorter game and thinking, this is really interesting. There's lots of interesting stuff to be talked about, and making notes and thinking about how they can fit in and who would like to talk about this and who's going to be interested in that. And the fact that Alex and I can talk for 2.5 hours straight on God of War Ragnarok, and just the pipeline of gaming has changed, in that it goes, find interesting game, play game, ooh, interesting stuff to talk about, like that, and bring it here. And yeah, awesome.
yeah. Actually, that's a really good point, because I know that. I mean, I don't think I would have made it through Last of Us as quickly as I did if I hadn't known that that you and I were going to be talking about the TV show, and that eventually we'll get round to talking about the actual game, and there was sort of motivation there to um stay on target and finish it. And also, like, when you get to those kind of difficult bits in a game and you're like, oh, I don't want to do this anymore, having someone who's played it and is like, no, keep going because it's worth it, is really, really helpful. And I think I've also started watching and listening to other game related podcasts and streamers and things that in a way that I hadn't before. So that's been quite fun because I'm sort of seeing what the industry is talking about a little bit more. And I did used to read a lot of industry news years ago, but I just kind of got out of the habit of it. So it's nice to have reason to, if we're thinking up topics for the pod and I'm like, oh, what's in the news at the moment about gaming, just keeps me a little bit on the up
I'm
to
still
date.
paying attention to the BAFTA Games Awards now,
Oh,
which again
yes.
is something like I don't know. I think I'd seen games that said BAFTA Game Award, and I'm like, yeah, whatever. But actually, it's now something that makes me go like, oh right, I quite like the things that they have at the BAFTA Games Awards. This is probably a good game. This is something I must buy, and stuff like that. So yeah, it's definitely made me aware, as you say, of those wider industry recognitions as well. That possibly when I was young, many decades ago, I used to pay attention to, but like now it's sort of faded out. It's like, yeah, okay, that's a good reason for looking at this. Still, it's fine.
So, one of the things I wanted to also talk about is what we feel that the sort of with our newfound kind of eyes on the industry, what do we think is the biggest sort of wins and the biggest fails within the industry? So I wanted to start with fails because then we can end on a positive. So so I think I was sort of really shocked the other day to read about the Summer Game Fest, which has been set up as sort of E3 and other similar games events have kind of are dying a death for various reasons. And the Summer Games Fest is a sort of um, event for people to showcase their games. And this year there were no women on the stage for 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 the session. And when the guy who runs it was sort of quizzed on it, he said, "Oh yeah, well we had invited this one woman, but she was busy."
Yeah, sure.
Sad. And it's like, well, maybe, but I mean, and then he went on to talk about how they wanted to really represent, the games industry and be true to what's going on behind the scenes and so it's basically he was saying the same story that we hear for almost every time this kind of situation comes up, which, oh no, but there just aren't any women that we could have invited. Obviously, there aren't enough black people that we could have had on our panel. There's not enough people with disabilities who we could honestly. It would just be, it's just bringing people in for the sake of it and all of that. And we know that's not true because we know that there are lots of people from all sorts of diverse backgrounds within the games industry doing amazing stuff, and there are certainly lots of women. So there was really no excuse for this, but I think it's really quite depressing to be sitting here in 2023, 2 years after we've started doing this podcast. No, getting on for 3 years after we started doing this podcast, and having to say that at this event there were no women present, not just complain about the fact that it wasn't an equal representation, but there were none. And there was an excellent article in and I can never pronounce it. Cockatoo? No, it's not.
Anybody know what Jen's
We
talking
could spell
about? Or
it.
is she just okay? No.
You could spell it. I don't know.
Doesn't matter. I'll
Yeah,
come back to that.
we'll come back. Yeah.
Yeah, where they were saying, it's just we're not seeing ourselves up there. 50% of the population is not being represented as being part of this world. And so yeah, so I think that's probably my biggest industry fail this year. Well, recently. I mean, this happened in the last few months. So yeah, this is very present. Has anyone else got any industry fails or anything along those
Mine's
lines?
yeah, Caroline.
No,
Yeah.
I was going to say mine's so trivial. I wanted to get in there, but like,
Yeah.
no, it's just so. As you all know, I like playing 7 Days to Die. 7 Days to Die, still an alpha after 11 years.
My God.
So this week they released, or actually was it last week? They released Alpha 21, and I have complained to you guys many times about how there are. It's a post-apocalyptic wasteland. There are zombies. One of the reasons I love the game is that it's all the terrain is modifiable, whatever the word is. Like literally, if you decide you want to take over a house, build a thing, you can build literally anything you like in it, pretty much. So it's a great game from that point of view. However, the people who develop it are assholes, and I suspect quite anti-woke, for want of a better term. And they have lots of traders in this post-apocalyptic wasteland, and there's always been one woman trader, Trader Jen. And I've complained to you
You've
guys
mentioned
before
her.
that Trader Jen's breasts have just been getting bigger and bigger with each alpha. Well, this time her breasts seem to have stayed the same size, but they have now. Her trader shop is Trader Jen's clinic because she's girly and so she does caring and kindness.
Oh.
And they've given her all these lines of NPC dialogue. Like, so basically, when you go into the traders, there's usually like, you bastard, why are you here again? Or don't let the door hit you out. Trader Jen now makes things that, frankly, are just so sadly suggestive. It's just like you feel so tragically sorry for the men who thought that this was a good line, and the poor woman who had to record the bloody thing as well, where it's just sort of like, oh, come back sometime and I'll give you a treat, and all this sort of bollocks. And it's sort of like, oh, thank you so much. I need protection out here, and it's so galling that they are deliberately, and I'm sure it's deliberate, making her less and less acceptable to female gamers. So I just wanted that was my opportunity to rant about that. So I just wanted to say
Absolutely.
Fair dues, yeah. My biggest disappointment, I would say, is it's very closely tied to the Summer Games Fest, in that not only were there no women, but the games that they showcased, I found myself starting to watch, and like 10 minutes in, I was just sighing in frustration because all of it was just so generic and so samey, and it was just not aimed at me, and I could tell, it's clearly not designed for a women gamer, or at least anyone who's not like, oh my god, it's so amazing, it's samurai and zombies and it's all grey and I'm shooting things and I get to be a man, yeah, that kind of thing, and it was just so boring. And I think, well, I was thinking the first thing that popped into my head was a trailer actually for a game that came out some time ago, but kind of summarizes my feelings in a perfect way. If you were to watch the trailer for Atomic Heart, I don't know if any of you know about Atomic Heart. It's basically a sci-fi shooter slash puzzler set in like futuristic 1950s slash alternate Russia. And I was really intrigued by like the setting. I was like, oh, interesting. Robots, Russia, 1950s. Okay, I could get on board with this. And as the trailer was progressing, I was like, yes, this is all going okay. Gets to the protagonist. The protagonist is your standard G.I. Joe American sweary, big muscly man guy in the middle of 1950s Russia, who has no memory of what happened before and has to go delving into the bunkers to find out what happened and all this. So it became very predictable, very bland, very boring, and very just, no more male protagonists, please. No, it was just so frustrating. I was like, oh, you could have gone with any other voice, literally. It was just so disappointing. And then from that point on, I was just like, well, not going to buy that game then, I guess. And it just kind of sums up all my feelings towards a lot of the games that were showcased in Games Fest this year. It was very disappointing for me, anyway. I mean, I'm not like, I know lots of people will be very excited about Final Fantasy and what have you, but from my time on the pod here, I'm not the biggest fan of Final Fantasy for whatever reason. It just doesn't appeal to me. But the one game I liked was Sword of the Sea, which is a sequel to Journey, and within the same sort of universe as Journey and Abzu and stuff. So that game I was really hyped for, but everything else was just generic and grey and fighty and shooty. Yeah, not good. Yeah.
And that's interesting, isn't it? Because when his excuse was, we wanted the people on the stage to represent the games to be, well, they were obviously all fighty, shooty, and grey.
Yeah.
Maybe not so fighty and shooty, just grey. What about you, Matt? Have you got any?
Those three are the best phrase. I've been trying to think of ways to make different, you can do 30-second YouTube shorts and 3-minute stuff. And Alex, you've just given us big muscly man guy, no more men please, and fighty shooty and grey. So
Yes.
bravo.
Thank you.
For me, I'm going to split this into another thing that has changed massively for the Morals podcast. Me understanding capitalism and researching how capitalism works and my perspective on patriarchy and capitalism, and that they're both two heads of the same hydra. So I'm going to do a Venn diagram of patriarchy and capitalism. So patriarchy in the industry, the Activision Blizzard lawsuit, which seems to just be, I don't know if it's been settled, but whatever it hasn't made a massive industry-wide impact, which it should have done. So everything should have changed as a result of that, and it hasn't thus far. And that's not the fault of the victims and the defend and the prosecuting side of it, because it's got the entire industry, the powers that be, trying to suppress it as much as possible. Another area is voice actor conditions. Voice actors have had to go on strike because, like the Hollywood writers, they are just being squeezed down. They're the next profession on the capitalism chopping block, because no one is sacred apart from the ruling class. So if they can do away and get rid of the working rights and working incentives as much as possible, that's what capitalism is. Capitalism is, it's cut costs, maximize profit, and people are the perfect place to, you can cut them down as much as possible and replace them as much as possible as you can. So that's the patriarchy side. And moving into capitalism, the slightly more frivolous side, as I get these next two games, Harry Potter was a foundational pillar of my childhood. So all of it is very deeply saddening for all of it. But the good thing is that the developers try to distance themselves from J.K. Rowling, which I think we did. We did 3 episodes on Hogwarts Legacy, and I think we did a really good job of it. I think we did a really interesting analysis and conversation to have. And we talked about how the developers, instead of going, J.K. Rowling, this is J.K. Rowling's world, and we support her and everything she says, they went, well, there's going to be more money. We'll make more money if we distance ourselves, which means that they think the more money is in the diversity, which is good, even if they're doing it and it's Pride Month and you see all this bullshit of companies going, woohoo! Even though in countries where LGBT rights aren't very good, they don't show those things there, that would be some courage and strength. And then the game itself was a terrible dumpster fire of shite, and that was upsetment on something. If it had been the most brilliant game ever, that would be one thing. But being an utter the shite that only capitalism can cause, because it's Harry Potter and then Star Wars Jedi Survivor, an even bigger mound of steaming shite. And you just go, this is capitalism, because who cares? Who cares? If we put Star Wars and Harry Potter on it, it's going to make hundreds of millions of dollars, and it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter what the game is like. And that's the biggest, just that devastates me every time. It's fucking,
Matt, well, why don't you kick off with the wins then?
Yes, biggest wins. Unionising workplaces. There are more and more areas in the industry that are unionising and doing workplace organising, and it's not just the workplaces. There's actually this. I think it was Riot Games. They have a professional esports team, and they've got a developmental league team. So they've got their professional players, and then the semi-professionals who they are investing money in, because they know that these are the ones that are going to be the next generation. It's the feeding system for them. And the Riot Games had decided that they were going to basically cut the entire developmental league, because they want to keep the money that they would be investing for executives and payouts. And they know that the next generation, they're going to find a way through. Some of them are, but they get them to do it for free. So that's the cutting costs. And so it's just them going, oh, we want you all to do all the hard work building yourself up for free, and once you've established yourself, then we'll come and take you in. They want the finished product first. But the professional teams actually unionised and on strike on behalf of the developmental teams, and they want to get those teams back their funding, and that's a massive deal. And so I think that's still ongoing, but that's the sort of thing. So the more unions we get, that's how you solve the workplace harassment problems. Because if you go to HR and say, I'm being harassed, and then HR, which works for the corporation, goes, I'm sure he was just, it's not a big deal, just push it down. If they then go to the union and go, I told them and they told me to go away, then the union goes, okay, we'll stop everything, everyone down tools, and then we'll come and have a conversation about it. That's what I yearn for. The most awesome thing ever would be a women's strike of all women, stopping all unpaid work they do. That's
they did in was it Finland or
Iceland?
Yeah,
Iceland,
Iceland. That's it,
1976, 4, one of those.
Well, on that note of a strike, I'm going to call an end to this episode. So we will continue to discuss this. So you'll hear from the rest of us about what we think the wins were in the next episode. But from right now, I'm just going to say thank you very much. Like and share, and just send this podcast to one person, 3 people that you think might be interested, and that helped to spread the word. And we share every Thursday, so there's usually something out that you can find. So thank you very much, Caroline, for joining us again, and we'll see you really soon. Thank you.
Pleasure to be here.